Hello everyone, thank you for joining our webinar. I'm just going to get the slides ready now and then we'll wait for a few people to join. There we go. Okay, good. So I can see there's quite a few people joined. So we'll just give it another few seconds and then we can get started. Right, good. Let's begin. So thank you for joining everyone. This is our webinar regarding the future of fluorescent and insect light traps, and we will also be focusing as well on the LED retrofit solution. So we will start by introducing ourselves. I'll go first. I'm Jasmin Emmerson, Sales Director at Opti-Catch. I've got around between 13 and 14 years experience in food safety, namely shatterproof lighting, but also this touches very nicely on the pest control industry regarding insect control. And John, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi there, everybody. My name's John Stewart. I'm the Technical Training Manager with Pelsis. I've been in the industry now for 22 years. So I've had a bit of an insight into fly killers, utilised them and used them on a lot of audited sites. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you all. Thank you for joining.
Okay, so just a quick overview on what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk through the RoHS Directive and the difference in legislation between general lighting and special lighting. We will also go through the expected timescales of the exemption extension, and we'll cover off what still needs to happen before a ban can fully take place regarding special lighting. Then we're going to move on to discuss retrofit LED and how it's a sustainable and cost-effective way to switch over to LED when you're good and ready. And then finally, we are going to have a live Q&A, so that'll be your opportunity to clarify any of the points that we've discussed or ask any questions that you may have around, anything that we've covered. I will say, depending on how many questions we get, if we don't get to all of them, then don't worry, because we will definitely be in touch afterwards to answer any questions that we've missed. So first off, it's really important to understand the difference between general lighting and special lighting, because there was a RoHS Directive ban affecting general lighting back in September 2023, which I think did cause quite some stir of concern amongst special lighting applications, probably because it's not well known what the difference is. But RoHS legislation has split the two out, so it's really important to be aware of exactly what that difference is. So what you can see here on this slide is you've got the visible light section, which is between 700 and 400 nanometers. This refers to any light that is essentially used to just purely light a space. So the lighting that you have in your warehouse, in your homes, the sole function of that lighting is to light the space. There's no other function or application, generally speaking. When we move over into special lighting, that is this section here. You'll see that it's been broken down into three. So the first one that you see is between 400 and 320 nanometers, and that's referred to as UVA. That is most commonly known for being used in insect traps. But it has also got some other applications, such as, the UV curing of inks and adhesives, things like that. But primarily we would know it as being used in insect traps to attract insects and then essentially control and manage and monitor insect levels in any kind of environment that warrants that. So the next section would be UVB. Which you can see here in the middle. UVB applications would include tanning beds, the medical management of certain skin conditions like psoriasis. I think they're also used in vivariums as well for certain reptiles. So there's quite a few sort of broad uses there. And then finally, we've got UVC, which is also known as germicidal. This is quite commonly used for air and water purification or surface disinfection. It became quite popular during COVID because it was a way to make sure that laptops, phones, personal belongings were completely free of the coronavirus if you were moving between premises, things like that. So those are all of the different applications of special lighting. And just to clarify, anything from here onwards is all currently under one umbrella in terms of the RoHS ban. So special lighting as a whole is all of those kind of applications that we've just discussed. Now we're going to look back at what exactly happened with general lighting, because I think we now all know that general lighting fluorescent lamps were banned in 2023. But I think what's not commonly known is just how many years it took for it to get to that stage. So white LEDs used for general lighting were first produced in 1996, which feels like a long time ago, and you know it is, but LED fittings didn't actually sort of commonly appear on the market until 2009. Now you're probably wondering, how come, if fittings first appeared in 2009, why were fluorescent lamps for general lighting only banned in 2023? And the reason is it's not viable to ban something like fluorescent lamps when you haven't got enough technically and commercially viable alternatives. So what we've got here is a timeline just detailing exactly when the ban took place for all of the different types of fluorescent lamps, of which you probably will be familiar with most of those types. So you can see that although they're at different stages of 2023, they all came into effect in 2023. So you've got many, many years from LEDs becoming available on market through to the eventual RoHS ban. And the main reason for that is it's not desirable to have that many fluorescent fittings needlessly go to landfill just because of a technology change. So it's a staged approach with a strong retrofit development to make sure that prior to the phase out, there's not going to be a sudden mass disposal of all the fluorescent fittings that are in circulation. So you could probably quite reasonably now go to the shop and need a replacement bulb or lamp for any kind of traditional old fluorescent fixture that you may have, and you'll be able to find something that retrofits into it. And that's because that had to take place first before a full ban could be implemented. And the reason that this ban that was first referenced in kind of, I think it was about 2011 time that they first started seriously talking about it, the ban didn't take place until many years later in 2023, because the companies that manufacture lighting were requesting extensions to allow the lighting industry to obviously develop suitable alternatives for every lamp type. So this includes like a first fix situation where someone, for whatever reason, needs to buy a new fixture, but also retrofit. Again, because we can't be disposing in mass for perfectly good fluorescent fittings that are still serviceable. So what is the current status of UVA fluorescent? So Signify are the manufacturer of Philips brand fluorescent lamps, and they are quite a prominent member of the discussion surrounding the RoHS ban for special lighting, and that's because they are a large manufacturer, and they've got a responsibility to make sure that the ban only takes place when there are enough technically and commercially viable alternatives. So what Signify have put together is this expected timeline that you can see here. I would like to direct your attention to where the arrows are pointing, because this is actually the section that directly references UVA, which is what we're talking about here. But actually it's quite worthwhile seeing all of these down here, because you'll see that they all do actually have different intended ban dates, and that's because where there is a suitable alternative in LED, and that includes retrofit and first fix, the extension is not being requested. So what you can see here for UVA is that the current RoHS extension, which is a 5-year extension that started in 2022 and naturally comes to an end in February 2027. You'll see that's referenced here. So you've got 2027 here. So that is the current exemption. But what you'll see is there is an intended prolongation request. And at the time of making this chart, it was under preparation, but I do know that that has now been submitted. So they have formally requested a 5-year extension to the RoHS Directive for special lighting. So you see here UVA and UVB. So it's not just UVC, and you'll see the same here for UVC, exact same prolongation request. Again, the reason that Signify have done that, or I should say they are part of Lighting Europe. So Lighting Europe and the Lighting Industry Association have both requested the same duration extension, which is 5 years. 5 years is the maximum you can request. So it's not necessarily even then reflective of when they expect the ban to take place. It's just that is the most that you can request at any one time. Signify have a really long proven history of working with Lighting Europe on exemption extensions of this nature, and they do not anticipate any issue with this being granted. And in fact, if they felt that the market was ready for a phase out of fluorescent lamps, and they would not request the extension. They're requesting the extension because it's reflective of the fact that we're not quite ready yet. So what needs to happen before a ban can take place? So firstly, although switch start ballasts are prominent, there are also very high volumes of electronic ballasts in use, and at the moment there is no suitable retrofit alternative for those. So you've not only got the different control gear to factor into this, but also the different lamp styles. So you'll be familiar with perhaps a circline lamp, a compact fluorescent lamp. At the moment, there are no retrofit developments on the market for those control gears and those lamp styles. So before a full ban can reasonably take place, you would need to have a much more elaborate kind of extensive retrofit family, because otherwise we're faced with the same issue whereby lots of traps will needlessly go to landfill prematurely, and that is not, it doesn't matter how you look at it, that is not sustainable. And the whole point of this directive is to make it more sustainable. So there is an air of common sense that's applied. It's not just a flat out, we've got a few LED solutions we're going to ban. Also, we need LED development in the other applications that we mentioned a few slides back. So UVB and UVC, just because we've got suitable, or some suitable LED solutions in UVA, there's still 2 other areas that need a lot more development before that's going to have a strong LED offering. And at the moment, like I say, those are all bunched together under the special lighting umbrella. So realistically, until there's a stronger pathway for technically and commercially viable alternatives in UVB and UVC and all of the associated applications, then there would be no sense in initiating a ban, because it would leave certain markets completely uncovered. For example, we mentioned water and air purification on UVC. It would be detrimental to public health to ban those fluorescent UVC lamps before there was a suitable LED alternative for every socket. So that hopefully puts your minds at ease that actually we've got quite a long way to go before a ban can take place. And I think a lot of the confusion that's happened this far, particularly within the pest control side of things, is because we can look at it and say, oh, we do have lots of LED solutions in first fix LED within pest control, and we do now have a couple of retrofit solutions, but actually in the grand scheme of special lighting as a whole, there's so many more developments that need to take place, and some of them are a lot more technically complex than UVA. I mean, I think UVC and UVB are a little bit more difficult to apply LED technology to. So hopefully that does put your minds at ease that it's not going to be an immediate switch over. And actually, whilst pest control is a very important application, it's not a significant application in terms of the volume across fluorescent lamps and special lighting. There's many other applications that need to be considered. So now we've talked about the delayed RoHS ban, I think it's really important to talk about the benefits of retrofit LED, because it's not something that you need to do absolutely immediately, but nonetheless there are some very obvious benefits to moving away sooner rather than later. So, benefiting, the first benefit would be less lamp replacements. So retrofit LED, you know, for example, the Opti-Catch, it has a 3-year lifetime, which means that where you are probably currently having your lamps changed every year, that would drop down to every 3 years, which is a cost of ownership saving. You've got 66% energy savings, which is obviously also good for any sustainability pledges that you have in your organisation. And sometimes clients can govern certain, you know, carbon footprint reduction and things like that. So actually, if any of your clients are looking at that, it's a good thing to mention that you're actually upgrading to LED in a very sustainable way. That being said, you can also utilise your existing equipment, so there's no additional installation or disruption. It also means that really you do sort of get a lot more bang for your buck from the existing traps that you've got on the wall, because obviously you've paid for those. They're not broken yet. There's no reason really to rip them off the wall and send them to landfill. Certainly, if it were me, I would want to utilise the equipment until I physically couldn't anymore. Another huge benefit of retrofit LED is the form factor. It's a universally available form factor at the moment, which means because it's retrofitting into existing fluorescent traps, it's using the same form factor or similar form factor as fluorescent. So in the case of Opti-Catch, for example, it's got the same G13 cap that you would be used to on your T8 fluorescent, and it fits in perfectly. This is a benefit because there are obviously some LED solutions whereby the replacement module or lamp is bespoke to one manufacturer, and that is I think that can cause some supply chain pressures and is definitely not favoured amongst many people. So this is universally available, which means that if you utilise one retrofit LED brand and for whatever reason you decide that you want to try another brand, perhaps another brand is claiming better fly catch, or perhaps another brand has got an offer on when you come to replace your lamps, you're not tied into any one place. It's a socket that you can fill with more than one option, so it's definitely more robust from a supply chain point of view. So some customers may wish to upgrade to LED and get the benefits of retrofit a lot sooner, but obviously that's not something that you absolutely have to rush and do, because as I've clearly mentioned, the fluorescent lamps are still going to be widely available for years to come, but there are some very obvious benefits to retrofit as a whole. Saying that, there's lots of options on the market, and so I think it's really important that you know exactly what to look for in a retrofit LED to make sure that you are keeping your fly control exactly where it is now or better. So the first thing that I think is really important to look for is the rated life and the accompanying warranty. Some solutions may offer a 3-year life but only a 2-year warranty, and that's not going to fill you with confidence, because if you do have any issues of early failures in that 3rd year, you're not going to, or it's unlikely that you're going to be fairly compensated. Now, currently in fluorescent, it's very rare that you hear of a fluorescent lamp not working for the full 12 months. It's incredibly rare. But with LED, there's such varying qualities and such varying components and things that's being used that not all brands are going to be equal. So some brands that claim a 3-year life but only a 2-year warranty, I would question that if it was me personally as a consumer. Another really important factor is the independent fly catch data. How does the product perform in comparison to fluorescent? Because right now you're using fluorescent and your fly control is where you want it to be, which is incredibly important for any food sites. I mean, there's many sites and applications where that's important, but food and beverage manufacturing is certainly important. So what you run the risk of if you don't check for that independent fly catch data compared to fluorescent is you could potentially be retrofitting with an LED tube that actually has significantly less fly catch, and then you run the risk of having an infestation, and it's too reactive to worry about that after the fact. It's important that you actually ask for that comparative data before you make a purchase. So you would expect a retrofit LED to collect or to catch the same amount of flies or more in independent fly catch data. You have a lot more variables in LED than fluorescent, so that's why the independent data is even more imperative than it would be. I think fluorescent lamps, although there are varying UV outputs, generally they all seem to catch flies in more or less the same sort of volume. I'm not saying that you don't get some that do it better than others, but I think that gap is much wider in LED because of the different components that could be used from brand to brand. And the very last thing you need to think about is compatibility. The most kind of prominent one would be the control gear, ensuring that you are using if you're using a fly trap that has starters, it's using a switch start magnetic ballast, then as long as it's the right lamp type as well, for example, a 15 watt 18-inch T8 equivalent, you basically need to check that the lamps you're using and the control gear you're using is suitable for retrofit LED. Now, the most common fluorescent lamps that are used by far would be the 15 watt 18-inch T8. And so most retrofit solutions that you can get on the market cater to this particular size, but you would still need to double check that you've got a switch start unit. I would say if you're ever unsure about what unit you're using, then just ask the manufacturer. They would be able to guide you on whether or not you're using the right control gear. I would say my advice to you would be, if you're using electronic ballast or any ballast that doesn't utilize starters, if it were me, I would wait, because right now, as we've learned, you can still get fluorescent lamps. They're still widely available. There is no immediate ban to worry about. So rather than panicking and changing your trap needlessly, just get the most out of your current equipment, because who knows where retrofit will be by the time that the RoHS ban takes place. We know that we need a good retrofit solution for almost every socket before a ban is going to take place. So realistically, you should be able to have a retrofit solution before you need to worry about it. So planning ahead, what can we do now? The first thing we would suggest you do is audit your inventory of traps so that you can check what lamps you're using and what control gear they're using. If you are using a pest control service or technician, they likely already have this information, so that could be something that you ask them for. If you're doing this or if you want this information for yourself, then I'm sure they'll share that with you or talk you through the different options that you've got. You would need to check your lamp replacement schedules. I think it's good to know which traps are being changed when. It's quite common that this is usually done in the spring so that the lamps are at their newest during the summer months, but it's still definitely worth checking that, when am I due to replace my lamps, so that you can potentially look to upgrade to retrofit LED around that time, so you're just utilising your existing fluorescent lamps for as much as possible. Some people are choosing to trial retrofit LEDs in key areas, so you could select some zones, perhaps the zones that are quite high risk from a production point of view. Oh, sorry, my phone's ringing there. Just going to turn that off. So you could select the zones that are high risk, that you don't actually really appreciate having your pest controllers go in and change every single year. Perhaps it's a busy production environment, things like that. Whichever zones you select, you can test the fit and the performance before a wider rollout. That's not actually absolutely necessary, but that's something that some people choose to do. And then, of course, again, as I've said, talk to your pest controller. Most of them are very supportive over switching to LED, and they'll be able to advise you on the compatibility and exactly what your options are. So the main things that we've kind of covered today, I think the most prominent is the fluorescent in insect light traps is not yet banned, and it's not something that we expect to happen immediately. There's definitely there's a clear pathway heading in that direction, but it's not something that we need to worry about right now. Insect light traps fall under the special lighting category, so they are not applicable to any previous bans that you've heard of. We've definitely heard of some people within the industry getting very confused by the general lighting ban and misadvising end users that they're affected and they need to change to LED immediately, and that is absolutely not the case for insect light traps. They fall under special lighting, of which we know a new 5-year request has been made for an extension, and we strongly expect that to be granted. It's also worth noting as well that simply by requesting a 5-year extension, we automatically get another sort of 12 to 18 months from the previous 2027 date to allow the EU time to basically process the request and look at it. So even if it was going to be a no, which we do not expect, you would still have until 2028 or beyond. So rest assured, there's no need to worry about fluorescent lamps. We've talked about how many years it took for fluorescent to be banned in general lighting, and we have absolutely no reason to believe that it's going to be any different for special lighting. A full retrofit family is needed before any ban can take place, as well as LED development in other areas like medical, things like that. And now we've also covered retrofit LED and how it's a sustainable and cost-effective way to switch. Of course, you do need to be mindful of certain factors such as catch rate, compatibility, and just making sure that your insect control is not going to be compromised by upgrading to a solution that doesn't match or exceed the performance of conventional. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour, but we now will welcome any questions that you have. As I mentioned earlier, if you ask a question that we don't get to, please don't panic, because we will absolutely get in touch and answer that for you. So let's have a look at what questions we've got so far. Don't think there's any just yet. Oh, I see there's a chat box actually. Oh, thank you, Sean. Okay, so there's not any questions just yet. John, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, if anybody wants a list of the units that we currently manufacture and distribute, then that are compatible with this tube, I have a list that I can share with people as well. So that will make things a lot easier in deciding whether or not the lamp's compatible with the unit.
That's good. I think that's really handy actually, because then they'll know exactly what they've got and what their options are.
Yeah.
Good.
I think in terms of the tubes and servicing, from a PCO perspective, it will certainly cut down on out of hours servicing if you're only doing it every 3 years. I remember I used to do a bottling plant. We used to have to do it over a weekend when production time was slightly reduced, so we had an opportunity to go in and service at that point, and that was better for the client because it meant there was less disruption. So you'll save on sort of staff wages, really, going in on a weekend, maybe giving people overtime in order to service the units, because you're only changing them every 3 years. And in terms of cost saving as well, disposal of tubes, you'll only be doing that every 3 years, so it will save on disposal costs as well. So there's a whole lot of win-wins for switching to this particular type of technology.
Yeah, that's definitely good. And I think we talked a little bit beforehand, didn't we, about the safety element in terms of if you're carting around a lot of fluorescent lamps to be disposed of, you run the risk of mercury, which of course isn't going to be the case if you're disposing of some LED lamps. So there's definitely that side to it as well. I can see we've got a couple of questions. So someone has asked for a price list for the replacement tubes. Absolutely. Actually, we'll be sending out an email after this with a link so that you can click through to the Pelsis website and buy. If you wanted to speak to Pelsis directly, their sales reps that are local to you would gladly help. So yeah, please do get in touch with Pelsis if you're looking to purchase. I can see another question there from Jack. What is the status of retrofit LED Opti-Catch for electronically ballasted fixtures? Opti-Catch have a strong intention to develop a full Opti-Catch family. Obviously, each prototype is going to have different sort of technical challenges to overcome, because we would not compromise on catch rate. So at the moment, there is no electronic ballast availability, but do keep checking, because that is something that we would always be looking to develop a full range, not just for different ballast types, but for different lamp types as well. Andrew, how should the new LED lamps be disposed of, general waste or recycling? So these lamps are part of the WE recycling scheme, just like fluorescent. So arguably the exact same way you would dispose of your fluorescent lamps, you would do the same for these. You've already paid the WE recycling fee at the point of purchasing the lamp. So I know some people still get charged for the collection of the lamps, but the actual disposal itself is covered through WE, so it would be actually no different. But of course, a third of the volume to dispose of, because you're changing every 3rd year. Let me see, are there any other questions? I see there's some in the chat box here. Is there any evidence to validate the no more annual replacement? Good question. Absolutely. Any decent manufacturer will have lamp specifications that show you the UV maintenance, so that would be no different to what you would normally get on fluorescent. There will be a UV maintenance curve that you can request. What's the best method to get the best breakdown of all models to find the best LED unit or retrofit for you with Flycatch? I think that would be quite a challenge, Sean, because I don't think well, not every manufacturer has obviously got a list publicly of which control gear each unit is using. I think the best thing to do is look at what you're using. Whether or not you're using starters is a really good telltale sign at the moment as for whether or not you can retrofit. But of course, if you're ever unsure, I would say it's better to just take a picture of the unit or give us the make and the model number, and either send it to Pelsis or Opti-Catch. We'll be able to advise you from there.
Yeah, we can help with that, certainly. Like I said, I've got a list of units that we supply and manufacture, so we can give that to you. That's available.
Yeah, that's good. Are your products available in India? And if you can clarify how much exact they may be percent efficient compared to fluorescent fly catching? Yeah, certainly. So Opti-Catch is indeed available in India via Pelsis. And in terms of the exact percentage, Opti-Catch we did independent lab tests across 8 repetitions against 15-watt fluorescent lamps, and Opti-Catch caught almost 10%, between 9 and 10% more flies in the same conditions in the same period. Where can you buy? You can buy from Pelsis. I don't know exactly where you're based, but there will be a link sent round after this that you can click through to express your interest or purchase directly from the site, depending on where you are. Is Opti-Catch available in Kenya? I'm not 100% sure of the voltage that you operate on in Kenya. I'm assuming it's between 220 and 240. I'm pretty sure it is, in which case, again, you would be able to reach out to Pelsis and buy it. Absolutely, it will be available. John, correct me if I'm wrong on the voltage side.
Not sure about the voltage.
No, I'm pretty sure the voltage is 220, 240, in which case, absolutely no problem at all. Let's see, there's some more here. Yes, we will be sending the recording afterwards, so if you've missed anything or you joined late, don't worry about that. And I can see someone in the chat has confirmed, yes, Kenya is 220 to 240 volt, in which case, yes, you can use Opti-Catch. Any more questions? We've got quite a few coming in. That's good.
There's one here. It's how does this fit with the BRCGS requirements for changing tubes every year? The fact that it's got a 3-year lifespan on it would comply, and it's the fact that it's shatterproof as well means that it's also compatible with those specifications too as well.
Yeah, and I would say as well that obviously Opti-Catch is in partnership with BRCGS, so I would say if you want to be sure that you're compliant with BRCGS standards, the best thing to do would be select a brand that you know is in partnership with BRCGS, because we've taken all food safety into consideration, like John said, with the shatterproof coating. What we've actually done is we've coated to the same criteria as IEC 61549, which is the shatterproof standard for double capped linear fluorescent lamps, and you'll know that you've always been told to look for the black band to check that the product is shatterproof, and we've got the same band on the Opti-Catch lamp, so auditors can see immediately this is a shatterproof product, and it's coated to the same criteria in terms of its shatterproof properties. IP rated units, are there any alternatives or pipeline for these? Will, which wattage are you referring to for the IP rated units? If it's a 15-watt T8, then it should retrofit, providing that the control gear is compatible, of course. But it should fit into the same, because usually on an IP rated unit you'd have some sort of collar grip or something to hold the lamp in place and make sure that there's no ingress risk. So arguably Opti-Catch should fit in no problem, unless I am mistaken. Is there a test that my site can use to check the performance of the lamps as they age? By that, I don't know whether you mean an existing live test. We do have live test data available, or whether you're asking if you can run your own test. Obviously, you're more than welcome to trial an area. What I will say is that it's quite common. People with fluorescent lamps will take a UV meter and hold it in front of a fluorescent insect light trap, and basically based on the UV output that the reading is given, they will use that to decide whether or not the lamp is still effective. Regardless of brand, that's really inaccurate, unfortunately, for LED. The reason being is that because LED is individual diodes, now of course we've got the diffusion coating to sort of disperse the UV as best we can, but it's not going to be a truly accurate way of measuring UV output. So definitely I would say that old approach on the fluorescent lamps, I mean, it's arguably a little bit inaccurate with fluorescent anyway, because depending on how far away you're holding the UV meter, you're going to get a different reading, and we would always suggest that you stick to the manufacturer's guidelines in terms of replacing the lamps. So that would be the same for Opti-Catch, but it's even more difficult to get a truly accurate reading on any LED product. Will you be releasing clips in podcast form after this for others to learn this valuable information? Yeah, I can certainly speak to our marketing manager about posting some clips, but as I say, anyone who's attended will get the full recording afterwards anyway. I think, unless you can see any I've missed, John, I think that's a lot of the questions.
That's it.
Good. Okay, last chance for any questions before we wrap up. Oh yes, Laura has just confirmed the recording will actually be uploaded to YouTube so that can be watched. So that's good. We have a site pest controller that manages our EFKs, but it would be useful to audit them or verify. Okay. I would say that if you're having your insect, if there's monitoring going on, then that would be something that is quite obvious that your insect control is working, because I would imagine that you're comparing it to the same month last year, for example, and just looking at what you've caught. But John is probably better to answer that.
Yeah, whenever anybody comes in to do a service of any of the units, they should be stipulating whether it's a major or minor service that they're doing. So a minor service is usually glue board or catch tray replacement or emptying, clean down of the unit and testing it. Whereas the major is lamp change. So at the point when they come in to do the lamp change, which is normally around about March, April time, so that you've got that optimum UV output across the summer. Obviously that will change now with the LED, given that it lasts 3 years. They should be marking down on their treatment report that they have done a lamp change at that point. So you would expect it to happen 3 years from that date. That's your way of auditing and monitoring how often they are being changed.
Good. And we also, by the way, I haven't mentioned, as well as independent lab test data, we do also have independent field test data, as I know that quite a lot of people, they like to see how things work in the field as well as in the lab. So depending on your preference, we can supply either. I think unless we have any more questions, we can wrap up there. Like I said before, if you think of any questions afterwards and you want to get in touch, by all means, please do contact either myself or John. We'll make sure our details are distributed by email afterwards. You'll also get a link to purchase if you wish to from the Pelsis website, and you will get a recording. So hopefully that will cover any other areas that we may have missed, but please do get in touch if anything springs to mind after this. So yeah, I would just like to thank everyone for joining, and thank you for your questions. And yeah, thank you very much, John, for joining.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.